So here we have an overview of the layout as it stood at the weekend. The Midland Belt Railroad consists of a few branches that all connect together, and I'll describe a little bit about how that works in the course of this video. But we're looking at it here from over FAIRHOPE at the moment. And this is just another view of the room just before we start setting out the stock on Saturday. This case we're looking from the TRENT yard end of the room, but it just gives you an idea of the scale of the layout. So the layout is managed through JMRI. The traffic is generated in JMRI, and previously we used SwitchList, an Apple program. And we use NCE to control the power, and you can see we use wireless here, just running JMRI again on a separate cheap old laptop. The layout is divided up into a number of branches. Each of those branches has relevant trains that run up and down those branches, quite often in and out of TRENT yard, and the switch lists are generated for each of those and dished out to the crews at the weekends, and we run days of operations. And generally the trains are running crews of 2, and you can see here some examples of that, with one person taking the role of the driver and the next one the conductor. So let's have a look at a few locations, and we'll start with TRENT yard. You can see in the top right hand corner of the plan here highlighted. TRENT yard is a really busy place. It acts as partly as a staging yard, interchange, and as a classification yard. And it's pretty central to most of the operations that happen on the Midland Belt. You can see here Bob's busy building a train to be taken out to the CARDWELL branch. So now Bob's built his train, let's just watch that coming out the yard and heading over towards CARDWELL. It's probably worth mentioning as well actually that although it doesn't feature very heavily in this particular video, the main activity on the Midland Belt really is about operating. Taking these local branch trains, working through a switch list to deliver and collect freight from the various branches and then to and from TRENT yard. So this isn't a layout where you're going to see long block trains and that kind of thing. We may have some passenger traffic at some time in the future, and there is a cement train which will feature slightly later on in the video too. So the first branch we're going to have a look at is the CARDWELL branch, which hangs off EMERY junction like most of the other branches. This consists of end-of-line, very simple single-ended spur, and here we can see Springfield, which has got 1 or 2 industries like a transload and packaging. And that's connected at the moment via Gilbert's Bridge, which is a very scenic item and might actually be moved out onto the main line at some point. But that connects to CARDWELL, which has its own yard with 1 or 2 industries situated here as well, like Riverside Chemicals and Ply King and a small scrap dealer that generate a lot of interesting traffic. And here we can see the crew working CARDWELL branch with a conductor calling out the moves and making the cuts while the driver follows his instruction and controls the locomotive.
So the next branch that we're going to look at is the Blind River branch, which extends in a dogleg at the top of the layout here, you see. This is quite a rural branch with a new module being created there, which is just going to have a single spur to store the local power. But on this branch you'll find some of the original modules from the group, or some of the oldest modules certainly within the layout at the moment, including Blind River, which has recently been extended, and Sheldon, which connects to the Emery junction. So Wallingford South is the end of the line, which connects to Wallingford, and the main industry here really is lumber. So the branch trains that work this branch tend to start and finish here in Blind River, where you've got a runaround and a team track as well with various traffic. And Sheldon just has a single spur supplying Cooper grain, and you can see some of my other videos that show you the construction of that particular module. So the next branch we'll have a look at is ASHLAND, which is one of the newer branches and still undergoing some design and construction. But you can see here it's got its own small yard, which provides some interesting puzzles for the switching crew. And there's actually the interchange with Quebec Cement here at Bedford Falls. And then round the other side of this sort of C section we've got Slough, where you'll find the Dunder Mifflin Paper Company. And here we can see Keith and Nick working the cement train. So the final branch we're going to look at is FAIRHOPE, which you can see on the plan here sort of curves round back on itself in a U shape, if you like, on the bottom left of the layout. And it consists of Blacksville, where we've got TBD Lumber, Ecolab, bit of industry to be switched there, and then round the other side of the curve we find FAIRHOPE itself, which has its own small yard again, and the main industry being the Kiddie Cake Company. So the last meet saw the introduction of some new power on the Midland Belt, and this being specifically Midland Belt engines, which have either been resprayed and redeckled, or in the case of one or two that I provided, patched out engines like 265 here. The Midland Belt engines can either be Midland Belt North, East, South, Central or West, and they all make up part of the same shortline company. So finally, I'm just going to leave you with some passing shots of the cement train that I mentioned earlier that we saw being switched at the Quebec interchange at Bedford Falls. This long train runs across the layout a couple of times during an operating session. And then following that, we'll have some shots of trains passing through Emery Junction, which is quite central to all the activity on the layout. And I shall leave it at that, and thank you for watching.